A state of flux, the late 11th and 12th centuries. Alexios Komnenos' post-Norman invasion military forces consisted of an assortment of mercenaries, great magnates' private troops, and impressed Balkan peasants. Besides Normans and Serbs in the west, he faced renewed Pecheneg problems in the central and northeastern Balkans during the late 1080s and early 1090s. He resorted to an alliance with the Cumans, who controlled the plains north of the Danube, to finally destroy the Pecheneg threat, but such an action left the empire vulnerable to Cuman incursions. Those developments, coupled with the Seljuk Turks' occupation of most of Anatolia, placed the Byzantine Empire in dire straits. In desperation, Alexios wrote to the Pope in 1090 requesting Western mercenary troops to help bolster his faltering military. Pope Urban II, 1088–99, used Alexios' letter to strengthen the papacy's temporal authority in the West by placing the Pope at the head of a Christian crusading movement against the East. As a result, Alexios received more than he bargained for. Scholars debate whether Alexios' request for military aid was necessary. By the time that the First Crusade arrived in the Byzantine Balkans in 1096, a series of military, administrative, and ecclesiastical reforms carried out by Alexios had stabilized the Byzantine position to the point that the empire not only could hold its own but was poised to win back much of its losses unassisted. Criticism from hindsight is easy. In 1090 the empire had been reduced mainly to its Balkan territories. Serbs, Croats, and Venetians steadily stripped away portions of the northwestern Balkans, and chaos caused by Pecheneg and Cuman incursions made Byzantium's hold on its other Balkan lands shaky. Alexios cannot be faulted for believing that he needed serious military assistance. Alexios initiated much-needed judicial, fiscal, and administrative reforms, but the most important involved the military. He won the support of provincial commanders by instituting the pronoia system of military landholding. Generally accepting existing provincial realities, Alexios provisionally distributed state lands to the great magnates on condition of their military service. The state retained ownership of the land grants, which could be revoked and redistributed if the holders did not fulfill their military obligations. Alexios counterbalanced the increased power of the magnates by playing off against them the high Orthodox clergy. Although the Great Schism between Orthodox and Roman Catholic Christianity occurred in 1054, it initially was an ecclesiastical division only marginally affecting the general populations of East and West. That situation changed with the Crusades. Before the first Western feudal forces arrived in the Balkans on their overland trek to the east, there appeared an undisciplined horde of peasants, beggars, ruffians, and soldiers led by Peter the Hermit and Walter the Penniless, who swept through the Balkans along the diagonal highway to Constantinople like a plague of locusts. Alexios quickly ferried them across the Bosphorus to Anatolia in swift extermination by the Seljuks. The ill will against Catholics that they spawned among the Orthodox inhabitants along their line of march became a lasting legacy. Popular Orthodox anti-Catholic sentiment was reinforced when one of the four contingents comprising the First Crusade followed the same diagonal route on its way to join the other three, who used the Via Egnatia route from Durrës, at Constantinople. Acting as if operating in enemy country, the troops looted their way south, fighting several skirmishes with local Serbian and Bulgarian inhabitants along the way. Although problems between Crusaders and natives were fewer on the Via Egnatia route, the First Crusade's Balkan marches engendered a popular animosity between Orthodox and Catholics, rendering future compromise on religious differences problematic. Alexios never desired the 50,000-strong Crusader army that answered his appeal for mercenary troops. Unlike mercenaries, who fought under their employers' orders, the Crusaders considered themselves independent of the emperor. Rather than reclaiming Anatolia for Byzantium, they sought only fighting, fame, and fortune in the Holy Land. Alexios and the Crusades' leaders suspected one another's motives and intentions. This especially held true for the Normans, led by Guiscard's son Count Bohemond, Byzantium's inveterate enemies. Even though Alexios obtained Western-style feudal oaths from the Crusaders' leaders and assisted them during their Anatolian operations against the Turks, Byzantine-Crusader relations were strained almost from the beginning and would remain so throughout the crusading epoch, despite sporadic periods of cooperation between the leaderships of both sides. The growing mutual distrust and antagonisms that emerged among the Crusaders' common ranks and Byzantium's general population ultimately intensified into mutual cultural animosity between European Orthodox and Catholic Christians. The activities of the Crusaders in the East occupied the attention of Alexios and his successors for close to a century. Such imperial preoccupation contributed to a decline in the already precarious Byzantine presence in the northwestern Balkans, ultimately permitting Croatia's absorption into Hungary and its Western European civilization, as well as Hungary's subsequent involvement in Balkan affairs. In Croatia prior to the Crusades, Zvonimir had been crowned king by a papal legate, accepting vassal status under Pope Gregory VII, 1073–85, and actively supporting papal reform policies, including the ban on the Slavic liturgy in the Croatian Church. Zvonimir attempted to disempower the regional Croat nobility by removing local notables from government positions and replacing them with trusted supporters, including high Catholic clergymen. His attack on the local Croat nobles earned him their undying opposition, the consequences of which became apparent when Zvonimir died. He had married a sister of Hungarian King Laszlo I, 1077–95, who bore him a son, but the child died soon after Zvonimir. His widow failed to win the Croat noble support, so Laszlo intervened in Croatia to protect her interests. Hungarian invasions and occupations of much Croatian territory, which continued under Laszlo's successor Kalman I, 1095–1114, and the death of Petr, the last independent Croat king, while resisting the Hungarians, led to the Croat notables negotiating a controversial deal with Kalman in 1102, commonly called the Pacta Conventa, in which they agreed to accept a dynastic union with Hungary. According to the agreement, the Croatian notables recognized the Hungarian monarch's sovereignty in exchange for retaining most of their political, legal, and social autonomy within Croatia. Centuries later Hungarian nationalists claimed that the 1102 union represented a conquest completely incorporating Croatia within the Hungarian kingdom. Croatian nationalists insisted that the union preserved an autonomous Croatian kingdom in partnership with Hungary. Recent scholarship has demonstrated that the Pacta Conventa was a 14th-century forgery and that what exactly transpired in 1102 remains unknown. In any event, after 1102 the history and fate of Croatia became linked to those of Hungary and Central Europe until the early 20th century. The incorporation of Croatia brought Hungary into direct contact with the Serbian states to its south and into competition with Byzantium over their possession. The two major Serbian states, Zeta and Raska, theoretically were Byzantine vassals. Zeta was in decline, disintegrating from a long civil war among its regional nobility for control of the throne following Bodin's death around 1101. Raska, after Vukan's reign, was an uneasy Byzantine client state. Through 1172 Byzantium and Hungary conducted a bewilderingly complex military and diplomatic relationship, in which they used the Serbs as pawns. Whole regions, Slavonia, Bosnia, Dalmatia, changed hands on almost a regular basis. The Hungarians consistently instigated anti-Byzantine Serb uprisings, while the Byzantines successfully put down the rebellions, often installed puppet rulers in Raska, and cultivated potential royal Hungarian heirs and pretenders in Constantinople. Military campaigning by both sides was frequent. Emperor Manuel I Komnenos, 1143–80, arguably the last great Byzantine military emperor, dispatched no less than 13 expeditions against the Hungarians before he succeeded in placing his Hungarian protégé and sworn vassal Béla III, 1172–96, on Hungary's throne. Once Hungarian king, Béla lived up to his oath, and Hungary remained a loyal Byzantine ally for as long as Manuel ruled. By 1172 Manuel's military efforts had won back Croatia, Bosnia, and Slavonia for the empire, and Bela accepted those conquests. Sometime in the late 1160s the Nemanja family acquired Raska's throne, perhaps with Manuel's blessing. Although 4 brothers at first shared power, by 1171 one of them, Stefan I, 1171–96, emerged as Veliki Zupan. The next year Manuel marched on Stefan and forced him into sworn vassalage, after which time, like Bela in Hungary, Stefan ruled Raska as a loyal Byzantine client for as long as the emperor lived. During his period of vassalage, Stefan gained control of Hum, formerly Zahumlj, and Zeta. Manuel died in 1180 and, almost immediately, his 2 former loyal vassals considered themselves free of further obligations to Byzantium. Anarchy reigned in Constantinople over the imperial succession, easily permitting Bela to retake Slavonia, Dalmatia, and the parts of Croatia formerly lost to Manuel. When Andronikos I, Komnenos, 1183–85, acquired the throne by massacring all of Manuel's surviving family, Bela retaliated by invading deep into the Byzantine Balkans, pushing south of the Balkan Mountains toward the imperial capital and sacking Nis and Sofia along the way. In the west, the Normans took advantage of the Hungarian drive to attack and capture Durrës in 1185. They then advanced on Thessaloniki, which was captured and sacked, before continuing toward Constantinople. The dual Hungarian and Norman assaults sparked a revolt in the capital that overthrew Andronikos and enthroned Isaac II, Angelos, 1185–95. Bela recognized Isaac as the legitimate emperor and withdrew his forces, allowing the new emperor to concentrate on successfully driving the Normans out of the Balkans. The turmoil of the early 1180s had important resonances inside of Byzantium's Bulgarian lands. There had been periodic Bulgarian revolts against Byzantine rule starting as early as Delian's rebellion in 1040–41. Many of the uprisings seemingly were sparked by the anti-Slavic religious policies of the Byzantine authorities, especially after the later decades of the 11th century. Slavic schools were closed, Greek-language religious services were imposed in some regional churches, and numerous Slavic books apparently were destroyed. No Slavic works from the First Bulgarian Empire survived in the Bulgarian regions. Fortunately, many were preserved in Russia, while a number of Greek manuscripts from that period survived in Ohrid. Byzantine control of the Bulgarian lands represented a serious cultural blow to the Bulgarians. Precisely at the time when Isaac Angelos seemed in command of the Balkan situation, it began to unravel. In 1185 Isaac levied a special tax in the territories formerly occupied by Bela to pay for his grandiose wedding to Bela's daughter, which had been part of the agreement for Hungarian withdrawal. The Vlachs living in the Balkan mountains refused to pay. At the same time, 2 Bulgarian notables and brothers, Petur and Ivan Asen, arrived in Isaac's camp seeking a pronoia grant in that region. Isaac refused their request in an insulting fashion, and the brothers returned to their home in Turnovo bent on revenge. They issued a call for revolt that shrewdly allied to their cause the Orthodox religious cult of Saint Demetrios, the traditional protector of Thessaloniki, venerated by Orthodox inhabitants throughout the Balkans. By appealing to the cult sentiments of both Bulgarians and Vlachs, the brothers were able to unite 2 populations that shared a common pastoral existence but were separated by different languages and traditions. By proclaiming the favor of the popular saint, the Asen brothers successfully stirred up a widespread rebellion of Bulgarians and mountain Vlachs. Although Vlachs initially played a leading role in the revolt's early stages, Petur and Ivan even may have been ethnic Vlachs themselves, they rapidly were superseded by Bulgarians, whose imperial traditions the brothers adopted. Petur Asen assumed the title and regalia of Bulgarian Tsar in Turnovo. The rebellion sunk roots in the Balkan mountains and spread to Bulgarian peasant villages in Moesia. Popular discontent with high taxes and proliferating dues and tithes imposed by the Byzantine authorities swelled the rebels' ranks. Isaac took a year to begin dealing with the Asen's rebellion. In 1186 he marched north and defeated the brothers in battle. They fled beyond the Danube and took refuge with the Cumans in Wallachia. After winning the support of those warriors, the brothers returned with a Cuman army in tow and re-established themselves. The Cumans commenced raiding into Byzantine Thrace and along the Black Sea coastline. Isaac's efforts to repeat his former victory proved fruitless, and in 1188 he was constrained to recognize officially an independent Bulgarian state that included Moesia and Dobrudza, which the Asans governed from Trnovo. The Cumans' Wallachian holdings fell under nominal Bulgarian control. To secure the Asans' promise to cease attacking Byzantine territories, a third brother, Kaloyan, was held hostage in Constantinople. The Asans quickly concluded that, as was traditional in Orthodox political culture, their state needed its own church organization. Since the Bulgarian archbishopric of Ohrid lay in Byzantine hands, the brothers unilaterally raised the Trnovo prelate to archbishop, removed him from Ohrid's jurisdiction, and placed all of their state under his ecclesiastical authority. Their actions were uncanonical and went unrecognized by the Patriarchate of Constantinople, but that mattered little to the brothers. The new head of the Bulgarian Church then crowned Ivan I, Asen, 1187–96, Tsar in Trnovo, while Petur remained his uncrowned junior colleague residing in the old capital of Preslav. The Asen's Second Bulgarian Empire was modeled heavily on Byzantium. Byzantine administrative and landholding systems operating at the time of the rebellion were retained, but the statewide centralization characteristic of Byzantium's bureaucracy could not be implemented completely. The new Bulgarian boyar class was drawn from the rebel leadership, augmented by the brothers' direct appointees. Many were Cumans while others were service nobles. Despite their debt to the rulers for acquiring lands and power, over time significant numbers of boyars succeeded in gathering to themselves large estates and considerable authority, which provided them with extensive local autonomy. The vast majority of the Bulgarian population remained rural peasants, most of whom lived as serfs on the estates of the rulers and their family, of the boyars, or of the monasteries. For them, life did not change. The success of the Bulgarian uprising signaled Byzantine military decline. The empire barely managed to retain the regions around Adrianople and Plovdiv against Bulgarian and Cuman raids. The disruption caused by the combative passage through the Balkans in 1189 of Holy Roman Emperor Frederick I, Barbarossa's, 1152–90, crusading army, part of the Third Crusade, served to emphasize Byzantine military ineffectiveness. Byzantium's hold on the Balkans obviously was slipping. Serbian ruler Stefan Nemanja threw off his alliance with the empire and attacked Byzantine Macedonia. In Dalmatia, Venice and Hungary competed for possession of the coastal cities unhindered by any concern for Byzantine intervention. In 1190 Isaac Angelos again attempted to crush Bulgaria and regain the initiative for the empire. After failing to bring the Asans to battle, his army was trapped by the Bulgarians while retreating through a pass in the Balkan Mountains and defeated. 3 years later the Bulgarians annihilated another Byzantine army near Arcadiopolis and took central Thrace. In desperation, Isaac forged an anti-Bulgarian alliance with his father-in-law, Bela of Hungary, for a combined assault on the Bulgarians, but Isaac was dethroned in 1195 before operations began. His brother Alexios III, Angelos, 1195–1203, needing revenues to gain support for his rule, immediately cancelled the campaign. Instead, he exploited quarrels that emerged within the Bulgarian leadership. Ivan Asen was murdered by one of his boyars in 1196, as was his brother Petur II, Asen, 1196–97, in the following year. Rule passed to the youngest Asen brother Kaloyan, 1197–1207, the former hostage of the Byzantines. In 1201 Kaloyan lost his primary military support when the Cumans were defeated by the Russians of Gallic and was forced to sign an agreement with Emperor Alexios III. The Byzantines were left in control of Thrace, the Rhodope mountain region, and Macedonia, all of which the Bulgarians had been threatening to take, in return for Alexios's recognition of complete Bulgarian independence.